Hey everyone, welcome to another Joe Gomez guitar lesson. This will be part 4 of the scales practice, which is all part of the practice series. So the first thing I kind of want to talk about, since we're kind of talking about how to improvise and get through chord changes and everything, I want to talk a little bit about licks. And so for me, when I first started to improvise, everything I wanted to play, I want it to be purely improvised, just coming straight from my mind or heart, wherever you feel music comes from. And I didn't really necessarily like when people said, "Hey, you should learn a couple licks, get it into your playing," because I didn't feel like that was really the right way to improvise. It's felt kind of like cheating in a way. But the longer that I've been teaching, I've started to notice more of what they meant by that. It wasn't necessarily that I need to learn licks and get them into my playing, that way I automatically sound better. It's so I learn how to use scales and arpeggios in creative ways, and then I can learn to make real music that people want to listen to, or something that's slightly familiar, something on the lines of that. So it's not necessarily I'm just going to steal licks and then I'm going to learn how to, you know, I got something that works over a C major chord. I'm going to every time a C major chord comes up, I'm going to use that lick. That's not necessarily what it is. It's more, to me, my philosophy on it is it's a way of learning. It's like if you're doing literature, you're learning sentence structure. To me, that's what the power of learning licks are. Now, occasionally, yeah, you're going to use them in your solo. You if there's a real famous solo, especially like the Charlie Parker stuff, you might throw that in there. The guys that play gypsy jazz, man, they throw Django licks everywhere. It's almost 100 years old and it hasn't gone out of style yet. But people still learn from what Django did, and they are still growing upon that to where they're coming up with their own licks. So that's just kind of my thoughts on that. So I do encourage you to go out and transcribe. If you, there's tons of books that have different patterns and licks in them. I would explore those, but definitely try to train your ears and at least pick up a couple licks or even just learn a couple melodies to songs. It's a little bit easier sometimes because it's not as fast. So how do you start to get licks into your playing? How do you start to figure out how to rhythmically place things to where it makes sense, to where it sounds, improvised? Uh, so a trick that I had learned is only playing uh, a lick at a certain time and not worrying about everything else. So if we kind of stick to the song "All of Me," we've got just sticking to the first four measures. You have C major uh, for two measures, then it goes to an E7 of some sort. You can use your ear to kind of figure out which E7, but we'll just say it's just a regular E7, no nines, 11s, 13s, and for now, let's just say our we don't really have a lick, but let's just say we're going to go up in arpeggio, C major arpeggio, and that's going up to the ninth. What you would do is, get a backing track or something, and wait until rhythmically you feel the right spot to play that over that C major chord. Let's just say, and then don't worry about the E7 and let that kind of bam through until you can start to really hear that over that chord change. Well, I guess there's not really a change, you're just playing it over a static chord, but until you can hear it, because that's really the goal, is to get you to play exactly what you hear in your head. And so that's kind of a step to that. And you can pick out a couple licks. Maybe you have a lick for the C major, maybe you have a lick for the E7 or the A7 after that, or maybe you use the same lick and transpose it from the E7 to the A7. That's something that you could do as well. But what I find happens to a lot of guys is that part of practice works to where they're playing that, but then they kind of jump around like almost like that lick comes out of left field. That they might be playing something up here, and it just it doesn't make sense when you're improvising. So how do you get to those points? So to me, what I do is I try to base things off chord tones. Chord tones in this case, over the C major chord is the 1, 3, 5, and the 7, and that's coming from the scale, which is a C major scale. Those notes are C, E, G, and B. Those are my chord tones. Those are the notes that are strong. They always sound right over top of that chord. And then for the E7, we have 1, 3, 5, flat 7, which in this case is E, G sharp, B, and D. So what I do is I try to compare what note's changing, where it might be going to. So with it was just saying C major to E7, so C could go down to B. These are all notes, chord tone leading. So this is how to get licks to lead from one to the next. D can go up to a D, or C can go up to a D. E stays the same. G will go up to a G sharp. All right. The chord tone. This is the 7 for the C major. Is B, so it stays the same. So one thing that I would practice and kind of pretend that it's a lick is using stuff like the bebop scale. So we've got notes that are staying the same within these scale or chord choices. One of them is a B. So what the bebop scale is, it's not something that you just kind of pick notes from and kind of play patterns over, although you can. It's more of a rhythmic device. And the reason that I like to practice this is so I can get the feel of starting a lick and ending a lick on a certain beat. And so if we were playing the C major bebop scale, starting from B, because B's both in C major 7 and E7, the notes would go B, A flat, G, F, E, D, C, and then B. So if we're playing that 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And landing on that B, it's almost like you can hear that chord change without anything actually happening. The other one was E. And so the scale stays the same. Well, let's just start from this E for fun. So we could go E, D, C, B, A flat or G sharp, G, F, E, and E again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, what the bebop scale is doing is it's getting you to kind of create a longer line, but you can also use it to connect chord tones together in leading situations. So let's pick another one, with C, but that's not leading us to another chord tone, so we have to kind of get creative. So let's just say we start on G and we want to get to E. We want to land there. So what I kind of do is I kind of figure out, this is me creating a lick or a scale passage, getting me from one place to another. I'll count out the notes. So if I'm playing straight eighth notes, I kind of need 9 notes to get me, to play 8 in the measure to land on the 1 for the next measure. So if I play G, A, B, C, D, E, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm missing a couple notes. So one thing I might do is play notes multiple times. So I might go G, A, B, C, D, E. So if we count that out, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So not really quite cutting it. So a thing that jazz guys kind of do is they'll add leading tones. And you might kind of remember that from the scale practice thing. So if we know we're on D going to E, we need a leading tone to E, but we can play D sharp or E flat. So then we could go, and now we've made that change. So in time it'd be 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. So that's something that I do to kind of, again, just get me connecting one place to the next. In this case, it's C major 7 going to an E7. And over time, I guess you kind of get some intuition on where you're actually leading to where you don't necessarily have to practice these things. It kind of becomes second nature, especially the more that you learn the notes of the chord tones that you're trying to lead to. And you'll start to come up with more creative ways to get there. And that's again, that's a power of learning licks or transcribing solos, is you see how other people have done it. They have their own creative ways of getting to point A to point B. But whenever you're taking a solo, you always want to have some sort of idea in mind. We've kind of discussed, scale patterns, digital patterns. Right now we're kind of discussing bebop scales, which I'm not getting into a great deal of information. I guess I can give them to you here in a minute. But I've got an idea in mind. I'm trying to get from one place to the next. I'm starting on a chord tone which is strong, outlining the chord using a scale, and then I want to outline somewhat of the next chord, with its particular scale, outlining chord tones. Again, just playing the bebop scale, something in my ear kind of already tells me that chord change without anything actually happening. That's kind of the power. They always say great improvisers can improvise their solo without the chords behind it, and you can hear what's happening. So I'll go ahead and go over the bebop scales. So bebop scales are usually descending, but you could use them ascending as well. The major bebop scale is pretty much, it's just the major scale, but you're adding in either the sharp 5 or flat 6, however you want to look at it. So C, D, E, F, G, A flat, A, B, C. And the reason that works out is because all the strong beats, or all the chord tones land on strong beats. That's what I'm trying to say. So if you're playing everything 8th notes, C would be on beat 1, which is the root of the chord, which is strong. D would be on the and. E would be on the 2, so another chord tone on a strong beat. F would be on the and of 2. G would be on 3. A flat would be on the and of 3. A would be on 4, which in the bebop days, those guys like using major 6 chords. So that explains where the A comes from. And then B would be on the and C would be back on 1. You could start on any of the chord tones and play the scale, and it always works out to where on the next measure you're landing on that note again. So if you started on E, right, the same thing with G. The dominant 7th bebop scale is just like the Mixolydian mode. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flats, or 6 flat 7, then 1. All you're doing there is adding a major 7th into the scale. So if we were doing C Mixolydian, it would be C, B flat, A, G, F, E, D, C. All we're going to do is add B. Right? And again, same thing works out. If you start on any of the chord tones, you're going to end up, on the right spot. So even if you started on B flat, right? And you can kind of hear how it wants to lead you there. So those are the bebop scales. Usually what people will do over minor chords is they'll just, if it's like a 2-5, so if you've got C minor, F7, usually you'll just play the F7 bebop scale over top of the C minor or the 2 chord. So this kind of leads me to the last thing, and I've mentioned it in other videos and said that I'd get to it, but it's Howard Roberts' Super Chops method. You might be able to find the book somewhere. It's usually pretty expensive because it's not out of print. But basically what you'd want to do is record yourself playing some chord changes. And and if you're an absolute beginner, try something real simple like this. You have 2 measures of C, 2, 3, 4, and go to E7. And just put that on a repeat. Howard Roberts in his book recommends doing that for 10 minutes. So you have a 10-minute long track. If you're lazy like I am, you can find something on YouTube or iRealB, or use a program to make one. Guitar Pro is a pretty good program where you can enter in the chords and just have it on an infinite loop. But then what you want to do is play strict eighth notes over that. And you want to start really slowly. I think the book recommends you start like 52 beats per minute, maybe even slower than that, with a weak end goal of trying to get to 60 beats per minute. But you want to play just strict eighth notes. But part of the reason you want to do it so slow is so you have time to think. All right, I'm on this note. How can I creatively get to this next note to make the chord change? And at first, you may want to just start with root notes. Just try to get from C to get to E. And try to do that in different ways. Then, expand upon that. Maybe you can try after that, trying to get the G going up to G sharp. See what different ways you can creatively do that, or try to find some licks, get some inspiration, move it in there. And then learn how to move back out of that lick and continue with your scale or something like that. But pretty much the practice thing, you record it, get a 10-minute backing track of some sort, play it at a very slow tempo for 10 minutes, take a 2-minute break, 10 minutes of practice, 2-minute break, 10 minutes of practice. And record yourself doing it so you can kind of go back and listen and say, all right, that definitely worked out. No, I didn't like that. And learn what you did that you liked, and then try to get that more into your playing to continue creating your own sound or come up with your own creative ideas. And you want to slowly up the tempo maybe each day. You're going to feel different on different days. But it's a technique building exercise, so that's also why you start so slow, is so you can make sure that you're playing absolutely perfectly. Your eighth notes are coming out at the right time. You're not missing any notes or strings or anything. And then as you grow, you can be able to play faster and faster to where your improv is kind of, again, second nature. You're hearing the ideas, they're coming out, and you've got the physical ability to play the notes that you hear. So this is, I think this is the end of the scales practice series, unless I can think of anything else or anybody has any questions that I didn't quite answer or cover in very good detail. So just let me know. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can get more updates. Sorry about this lesson coming up a little bit late. I have a lot going on, but hopefully in the future I can stay on that Wednesday track. But yeah, keep on practicing, and I'll see you guys around. Thanks.